Ever pondered about the pitfalls to sidestep when producing a podcast? Well, it's not as simple as hitting record and hoping for the best. From the way you present your content to the technical aspects, there are several common mistakes that could be standing between you and podcast success. Firstly, it's a cardinal sin to use phrases like "let's." This might sound a little odd, but there's a good reason behind it. The word "let's" creates a disconnect between you and your listeners. It's a subtle shift in perspective that can make your audience feel like outsiders looking in rather than active participants in your conversation. Instead, try using more inclusive language that draws your listeners into the discussion. Secondly, always opt for a cold open. A cold open is a technique where you dive straight into your content without any introduction or preamble. It's like catching a movie already in progress. It immediately grabs your audience's attention and keeps them hooked. A long, drawn-out introduction can be a major turn-off for listeners, and you risk losing their interest before you've even begun. Next, ensure to always use an active voice and maintain a conversational tone. Passive voice can make your podcast sound dull and uninteresting. On the other hand, an active voice makes your content more engaging and easier to follow. Additionally, a conversational tone helps to create a sense of intimacy and connection with your audience. Remember, a podcast isn't a lecture, it's a conversation. Furthermore, always write your script in English, even if it's not your first language. English is spoken by a large portion of the global population and is commonly understood even in non-English speaking countries. Having your script in English increases your potential audience and ensures your podcast is accessible to as many people as possible. Lastly, always follow the brief as closely as possible. It's easy to get carried away with your own ideas, but remember, you're creating content for your audience, not for yourself. The brief is there to guide you and ensure your podcast meets the needs and interests of your listeners. To summarize, when creating a podcast, avoid using "let's." Always opt for a cold open, maintain an active voice and conversational tone, write your script in English, and faithfully follow your brief. These tips will help you avoid common mistakes and increase your chances of podcast success. Remember, your podcast is a way to connect with your audience, so make sure it's engaging, accessible, and relevant.